up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel. Heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe or we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell. Can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell. Can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Hand of the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell. Can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
Everybody, yeah, let's get that off the screen now. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. All right, I don't know what in the flying hell is happening right now as far as our technical situation, but nothing is working. Absolutely nothing is working. Between the two of us, between Dylan and myself, there is absolutely nothing working right now. It's just not showing up right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to drop back 10 yards and punt, which means I'm going to reboot my system entirely. We're going to relaunch here in a few minutes. I don't think there's any other way to do this. I do not have the screen up. I do not have music playing. I don't have graphics up, and I don't know what is going on. So it is... All right. Are we actually in business now? I think we might actually be. Glory be to the heavens above. All right, chatters. Dylan, you can show the vibe a little bit there if you want. Thank you. And let's see. Are we live with the chat? Yeah, they should call it Stumble. I like that. Charlie G. I went into the chat here to make sure that we're live. And Charlie G just said they should call this Stumble. Where'd he go? Oh, okay, now it just refreshed. I called it Rubble the last time we had a problem. I called it Rubble, which is not bad. Just changing one letter. Stumble's not bad either, actually. And yes, it is PK Day. Big Jake. Is this Peter Kirsanow Day? His technical curse has infected Bob too. No, y'all got to understand something here. It's so and I do see that you guys see and hear me. So thank you for the clarification with that. And yeah, it's very, 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 very frustrating sometimes because, I'm up until probably midnight most nights prepping for the show, and everything is fine and hunky-dory. Everything is set. That's why you guys at, 5 a.m. are able to be the first ones into the room to get in and see, to do the show. So everything is preset the night before. And for whatever reason, occasionally, and this morning for the first hour before we went live at 7 a.m., I usually started about 6 getting everything ready, 6:15-ish, getting everything ready from the night before. Everything was continuing as the night before. But then once we went live, the whole system just went like freeze. Hard to explain why. Dylan was seeing it on his end. It was not showing up on my end, which is where it all originates. So it should not end up on Dylan's side, but not on my side, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And I'm just going to assume it does not, because it makes no sense to me either, and it's my freaking system. So I don't even know what to tell you that. Let's keep that. Yeah, thank you, Dylan. It is Kirsanow Day today. We do have a lot of things to get into today, but man, oh man, oh man. Yeah, I don't even know if I can call this a Rubble problem because I think this is actually a StreamYard problem, or it's a system issue. I don't even know at this point in time, but it's crazy. But thank you guys for sitting in and bearing with me and waiting for all of that to right itself. But hopefully we are right now. I do have Kirsanow, although Kirsanow will be interesting too, because Kirsanow is always a coin flip as to whether or not his system is going to be working. Peter, I mean, literally, since we started doing the video thing, he has struggled through video components at his work, his office, if he's there, in his home, on his phone. It's always one question or another with Pete. So between Pete's system and my system right now, man, I don't even know what to say about it. But we're going to do our best. That I can promise you. So thank you, everybody, for hanging in. Everybody who's in the chat. And sorry for all of that technical stuff. We're working on it. Does anybody No, never mind. I don't want to give any advertising to anybody. I was just going to talk about the ISP that I have, the internet service provider that I have, and maybe that's something I need to deal with. There may be a change in order there, but I won't ask what you deal with because I don't want to get into that ball game. Okay. Now that we are good, now that we are live, now that I've got all of my curses out of the way for the day, I think literally I used up today's, tomorrow's, and I might be clean for the rest of the week, actually, because I used all of the curse words that I needed to use during that frustrating last 15 minutes of technical hell that I was in. So, yeah, no, I don't think I want to update my printer right now. Thank you for the notification, computer system. What I do want to talk about, however, is the Karmelo Anthony trial. Dylan, if you want to fire that up there and bring up number 1 on the list. And Dylan, thank you for bearing through all of that as well. Dylan was working with me from the other end. Like I said, strangely, his worked and mine didn't, even though the whole thing originates here. How about it? The Karmelo Anthony trial, at least with respect to testimony, is over. The defense rested yesterday. And the defense rested yesterday without what, you ask? Let's remind everybody about this case, just for those who are a little bit uninvolved or uninitiated. This murder trial in Frisco, Texas, is extraordinary for a couple of reasons. But the most important thing, or most extraordinary thing about it is, if you feel as though your life is in danger, so much so that you have to take lethal action and use lethal force to protect yourself, i.e., self-defense, If you are literally self-defensive, wouldn't you want to tell your story about how you were afraid because of the murderous intentions of the person coming at you? Wouldn't you want people to hear that story if you're literally going self-defense? Well, the defense in the Karmelo Anthony trial rested yesterday without Karmelo Anthony telling everybody how frightened he was. The defendant did not testify. Absolutely hilarious. Now, I want to caution with the use of that word. There's nothing about a murder of a young 17-year-old kid by another 17-year-old straight thug. There's nothing funny about it. But what's funny is the legal defense of Karmelo Anthony saying that he killed Austin Metcalf with a knife that he brought to a track meet for no reason whatsoever in a tent that he had no business being in whatsoever, a place where he was asked to leave 15 times and refused to, saying, "Touch me and see what happens." That individual killed another individual. There's nothing funny about that except for what is happening now. The fact that his legal defense team thinks that they can sell self-defense without actually having him tell the jury why he stabbed Austin Metcalf. I mean, it is one of the most, I'm not a lawyer. My daughter is. I'm not. I'm pretty happy to say that now that she's graduated. She'll pass the bar in late July. But I'm not a lawyer. But I can figure a few things out from the law, from observation and from experience. And I can tell you this, that if you're going to claim self-defense, you damn well better be able to tell the jury what it was you were defending yourself against. What weapon did Austin Metcalf use when he approached you? What fear for your life? What dangerous mortal situation was developing there that you felt the need, the only way to protect yourself from either death or violent assault was to use a weapon to strike out at somebody? You better be able to explain that to a jury, or your ass is going to prison, hopefully for the rest of your young thug life. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm watching this whole thing and I'm reading the opinions of legal observers who are lawyers online and on television and so forth. And this article in the New York Post kind of lays it out. The move, not letting or forcing or telling this, I can only imagine what this thug would say. Honestly, I truly understand why they're not putting him on the stand. I do, because he can only do more damage to his case than as if he sat silent, which is why every defendant has the right to testify or not testify. It's literally up to the defense team. Because if he goes up there, he is going to be absolutely shredded, kind of like he shredded Austin Metcalf's chest, but metaphorically instead, figuratively instead, because he would have no answer whatsoever for why he brought a knife to a track meet, why he kept his hand in his bag on that knife for the duration of the exchanges with himself and the opponents in that track tent. He would have no answer whatsoever why he fled and flung the knife into the stands in an attempt to get rid of the murder weapon. Oh, I'm sorry, the self-defense weapon. He would have no chance or no ability to explain any of those actions or any of those facts, which is why they had to keep him off the stand. Which is also why I am begging, and I'm going to say a prayer, and I'm going to ask you to do the same thing in the name of justice. In the name of justice for Austin Metcalf. Say a little prayer that the jurors are asking themselves those very same questions. Now, they still have closing arguments today, so it's not done yet. There are closing arguments today. So, those will probably take a couple of hours. I doubt it will take 2 hours each because, again, the case has been laid out so overwhelmingly by the prosecution. It should be relatively short order from there. It should take the jury about, 10, 15 minutes, 10 minutes to get set up in the room and pour the waters. I've been in jury rooms. And then maybe 5 minutes to say guilty. Let's go. We'll see. But the fact that they could not put him up on the stand in order to tell all of the jurors why he was so frightened that he had to plunge a knife into Austin Metcalf's chest should be the beginning, middle, and end of this trial. That's it. It should be over. The acknowledgement is often a key component in self-defense trials in Texas, said defense lawyer Jeremy Rosenthal. See, I'm not a lawyer. Jeremy is. He says the same thing I say. How about that? Based in Collin County, where the trial is taking place. To get a self-defense charge, you have what is called a burden of production. You have to show through your own evidence that you do not contest the conduct. The baffling move may be a gambit to convince the jury to hand Anthony a lesser manslaughter charge in lieu of first-degree murder. I'm going to tell you this right now. The justice system is already broken. Okay, you know that and I know that. O.J. Simpson walked free. The justice system that's just obviously the most high-profile example. And it was a racially charged case, much like this one has become as well. So it's a pretty good example. But the system is already broken, but it will be irreparably so if that judge in this case allows a clear first-degree murder to be pled down to, or to have the jury be not pled down, but to have the jury be given an option of finding him not guilty of first degree, but finding him guilty of a lesser charge of manslaughter, which could give him, who knows, 8 to 10. He'll be out by the time he's 26, 27, 28 years old, something like that. That cannot happen, or the system just needs to be blown up and started over. In all honesty, that cannot be allowed to happen. Because again, like I said in the video that I cut a couple of days ago about this case, why do you bring a knife to a track meet? That's not part of track equipment. Spikes, that's track equipment. Socks, shoes, uniform, water bottle, maybe sweat towel. That's about all you need for track. That's about it. Nothing else you really literally need. But somehow he added knife to his list of requirements to be at the track meet. He decided to add a knife to his gym bag to go to the track meet, and then go into another school's tent to sit down and goad them and provoke them and dare them to make him leave. Kept his hand in his bag. There was commentary from the witnesses that said, this is Frisco. You ain't got nothing in there. Because Frisco, Texas has rules about what, carrying weapons is essentially what they were saying. And it's, of course, a school event, a track meet. So therefore there are school rules as well. You've got nothing in there. So quit acting hard was essentially the vibe in the tent. And then when Austin Metcalf tried to evict him from the premises, that's when he pulled his hand right out of that bag and then plunged a knife into his chest. The baffling move may be a gambit to convince the jury to hand Anthony a lesser manslaughter charge in lieu of first-degree murder. Again, if the judge allows them to do that, we've got a real problem here. The defense can request the jurors be allowed to consider manslaughter before closing statements begin on Tuesday. Those negotiations are probably happening right now, the attorney Rosenthal said. Not having Mr. Anthony testify potentially narrows the pathways to acquittal. You think? Your argument is self-defense, but he's not explaining what he was defending himself from. What is this, a joke? The right to testify or not is exclusively the defendant's. The closing argument will tell us if there's a bigger strategy here and exactly what that is. But the arguments for allowing the jury to downgrade to manslaughter seem stronger than for a total acquittal on first-degree murder based on self-defense, another lawyer observed. Steve Bassett, a Texas-based defense attorney of more than 30 years, said, quote, "I've always thought this was a bit of an uphill battle for the defense simply because a knife was introduced into the conflict so quickly. I've never read the fact that it existed, Attorney Bassett, the fact that there was a knife there is enough as far as I'm concerned to tell you what the intention of the thug killer was. He brought that knife that day not to dig dirt out of his track spikes, but to kill somebody. Why else do you bring knife, then sit in tent, goad people into dare them to remove you and see what happens? He was stabbing somebody that day. Now, what is going on in his life outside of that? No clue. No clue. I don't know anything about his family life, other than his family life got a whole lot better after he murdered a 17-year-old kid named Austin Metcalf, because they got $600,000+ in donations by way of Give, Send, Go from primarily Black activists and probably awfuls, the angry white female leftists, who sent tons of money because Black kid killed white kid, going to be on trial for it. Let's lavish the family with money. And they said, thank you very much. And they bought cars and a house and all kinds of other things. So life got better for them. But prior to that, whatever was going on in this young thug's life, he decided he was going to kill somebody that day. There's no other reason to bring a weapon to a track meet than get involved in an altercation intentionally in a place. Trouble didn't find Mello. He wasn't walking from the parking lot into the track meet, into the stadium, and then got jumped and had to defend himself. Good thing I brought my knife. He went in unobstructed, marched to an opponent's tent and sat down and provoked a confrontation that would allow him to use his knife. It literally makes zero sense any other way. Attorney Bassett said, I've never read about any testimony that indicated the conflict was particularly intense before the stabbing. That is true. There was no intent, or excuse me, nothing intense, rather, about the conflict or about what was going on in there. It was all words. The prosecution had its work cut out for it, proving first-degree murder. It doesn't sound like Anthony went in there wanting to kill somebody that day, said Rosenthal. It was an aggressive, reckless act combined with really bad luck. See, and this is when I want to take this guy's law degree and tear it up, and I won't say what else I would do to it. Again, why would he bring a knife to a track meet? That's it. That's it. If he had not brought a weapon to that track meet, and he just came in and did everything else the same, went into a tent, an opponent's tent, sat down, was asked to leave 5, 10, 15 times, according to the testimony from that witness stand, and refused to leave, saying, touch me and see what happens. Try to put me out and see what happens. If he had gone in there without a knife and then got into a fist fight and he actually punched and beat somebody to death, maybe we can have a question about the first degree intent. Maybe that was something that just happened spur of the moment. Maybe he didn't intend to kill him when he was beating him in such a, hand-to-hand mutual combat type of confrontation. Maybe you make that argument. But he brought a knife and then went in to an opponent's tent and then decided he was going to dare them to evict him. And then when one of them tried to stab them to death. How that doesn't spell first-degree murder from the very beginning is anyone's guess. Body camera footage in which Anthony tearfully tells the arresting officer that, quote, he put his hands on me and asks, is he okay? Will also help the defense paint him as an angry, reckless kid, not a cold-blooded killer, according to this attorney. Even in Texas, the fear of deadly force is required to prove that deadly force was justified, according to the experts. That means the defense will have to prove that Anthony feared for his life when Metcalf tried to push him out of his team's awning in the stadium bleachers. But Metcalf's teammates testified Anthony had his hand in his backpack, clutching the knife well before Metcalf ever made contact, saying, touch me and find out. When you say touch me and find out, you could take that to mean I will kill you, said Attorney Rosenthal. Exactly, which is why second degree or manslaughter should be out the freaking window. A verdict could be handed down as early as Wednesday evening, thanks to a no-nonsense judge who has moved the case along at a breakneck pace. District Judge John Roach has a reputation for efficiency, especially for this trial, the very last of his career. That's unique. Roach extended courthouse hours and even held proceedings on Saturday once he ripped into the prosecution team for showing up 2 minutes late from a recess. Roach is very efficient. He'll eat jail food with the inmates over lunch to see how it tastes. He will wear an ankle monitor to see how it hurts, Rosenthal said. Roach once spotted a defendant out violating his probation and apprehended the man himself, holding him until police arrived. He's got a heart of a servant, and that's all you can ask for. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the judge. So the reason I wanted to get into all of that should be obvious, right? This is a high-profile case that involves a white victim and a black defendant. The merits of the case, the facts of the case are fairly evident, obvious, clear. Should not really be, this shouldn't be up to legal debate. There's a murderer and there is a victim, and there was no reason whatsoever except for the intent of this guy to show up with a knife and then to try to provoke an altercation, which is exactly what he did. So it should be just another ho-hum day in the terrible, sad reality of our country that there are some bad people in it that harm people. And there are some good people in it who get victimized. So why is this case bigger than what it is? Because this is a country that has proven that certain incidents, criminal trials, and so forth lead to not just wow, did you see what happened in that trial discussions at breakfast tables? Hey, that verdict came in. Did you see what happened in that case? Yeah, boy, that was wild, wasn't it? Or boy, yeah, I agree with that one. Or no, I disagree with that. I can't believe why they thought that. That isn't what this country has done in matters where there are white and black people who are activists, who are actively agitating in a community, waiting for a verdict. Because what has become commonplace in this country is violence. George Floyd, O.J. Simpson, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray. Trying to think some who should have been Barack Obama's son, did he say? Oh, Trayvon Martin, which is weird. Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman was not even black and white. It was black and Hispanic, but whatever. But these are cases that involved, and they should not be racially motivated, any of these things, because race was never at play. It didn't matter that George Floyd was black. George Floyd being the career criminal crackhead and meth head and fentanyl addict that he was the point. It didn't matter, and it should not matter what color any of the aforementioned other individuals were when they were committing criminal acts and then involving law enforcement or other individuals. In the case of Trayvon Martin, for example, it wasn't law enforcement. It was a neighborhood watch guy. Point being, though, that in high-profile cases like this, when there are either convictions that black activists disagree with or lack of convictions where people felt like there absolutely should have been, it has touched off violence. And I think everybody watching right now and everybody who's being honest with themselves and everybody who is, even moderately familiar with the truth would point out that there are convictions and there are cases that specifically lead to outcomes intended to avoid riots, to avoid burning down police stations again, to avoid chaos in the streets, smashing of windows, widespread looting, widespread damage and vandalism. For example, the Derek Chauvin trial in the George Floyd case. Derek Chauvin was convicted to stop the country from burning again. It burned for weeks after the George Floyd case. If Derek Chauvin had been acquitted, it was going to start the fires all over again. And the jurors in Minneapolis knew exactly that. That's why there was prayer. And so did the prosecution, so did the defense, so did the judge, which is why they did not allow certain evidence to be presented in the trial that would have acquitted Derek Chauvin. Everybody who is a legal observer and scholar knows that. Again, I'll advise you to watch the movie The Fall of Minneapolis to see what I'm talking about. It's a documentary, and it contains all of the evidence that the judge rejected and would not allow to be presented to a jury, because it would have led to a jury acquitting Derek Chauvin and started the whole country burning again. Urban centers across, what happened in Cleveland, Ohio, where we are. Cleveland has nothing to do with Minnesota. Why were they burning things in Cleveland? Why were storefronts being smashed? Why were businesses put out of business? And the answer is, of course, there you go. Thank you, Dylan. And the answer is, of course, because of the racial component of this. And it strikes a whole lot of people, a whole lot of ways. My point being, I am going to pray that this jury in Frisco, Texas, does what is right by Austin Metcalf, does what is right by the rule of law, does what is right by the criminal justice system, and isn't fearful that a conviction on first-degree murder will set off violence in Frisco, in other cities in Texas, or around the country, because this is high profile. The NAACP and the something Action Network and all of the other Black activist organizations out there. I mean, I was watching a video yesterday where some of the Black bystanders in Frisco, Texas, were asked about this case, and they were asked something to the effect of, if evidence is presented that Karmelo Anthony brought that knife to a track meet looking to cause trouble that day, and provoked a response that allowed him to stab somebody, would you be okay with convicting him? And some, not all, but some of the answers from some of the Black activists outside there that day, yesterday, some of the answers were, no, I'm going to stand with Mines. Sorry to say it that way. It's how it was said. I'm going to stand with Mines. In other words, they stand with theirs, they being white people. I'm going to stand with mine, no matter whether he's guilty or not. He's a black teenager. So of course I'm going to stand with him. Forget about the murder. So if that's the attitude, and one of the prospective jurors, by the way, a Black prospective juror who was in the jury pool, was asked point blank if he could be objective in this case. And he said, nah, I can't see me sending a brother to jail. That's how he got out of being on the jury, whether he was telling the truth or not, whether he just wanted to get out of the jury or was just telling the truth about what his, opinion was, that he was only going to, be on that jury if he could do what he wanted to do, which is set him free. Said, I can't send a brother to jail. So he was removed from the jury consideration. But that's the bottom line here is say a prayer that justice is done for Austin Metcalf. Say a prayer that justice is done for the criminal justice system and for the sake of the country, and not necessarily, and again, for the sake of avoiding violence and any responses and so on and so forth. I think it is about as cut and dried as it gets, though, when it comes to a murder trial. But then again, we thought the same thing with O.J. Simpson. His DNA, his victim's DNA, the whole, I don't want to relitigate the whole thing, but you understand. We thought those things were pretty cut and dried as well. All right, let me pause here to remind you to get on the bus. Get on the bus. Doesn't that bus look fun? That's not what our bus is going to look like, actually, but that's the theme. We're going to be on the bus 2 weeks from yesterday, June 22nd, Monday, June 22nd. We're heading down to Columbus for the One Small Step event. It is going to be an America 250th celebration, America's 250th birthday. Let me drop myself off there so that looks a little bit better. There you go. One small step. This is being hosted by our friends at AFP, Americans for Prosperity, and they are a foundational sponsor and supporter of, strictly speaking, Unfiltered, and they're fantastic patriots at AFP. But they're also being joined by the Libre Initiative and Concerned Veterans for America. They have an event in which they're going to have some great speakers. I am proud to have been asked to be one of them, and we're going to bring a busload of people from different corners of the state to converge on Columbus. There's room for, I think, around 500 to 600 people in the event center at the Columbus Crew Stadium, where we will be on Monday the 22nd. And Jack Windsor, our friend Jack Windsor, is going to be there, and he is going to speak as well. There are some veterans and some heroes and true patriots who are going to be all there to talk about not only what America 250 means and what the theme of one small step means, but also to talk about going forward as a country, maybe what the next 250 are going to look like. And it's going to take a whole lot of strong activist people like you and me to come together, excuse me, to come together and engage and inspire and strategize with one another on what that looks like, because volunteerism is at the heart of all of it, which is why it's called One Small Step. What small step will you take in order to try to help this community, this state of Ohio, and this country? What small step will you take? And that's what this whole thing is about. So the first small step for you to take is to click the link that you see next to number 1. Now, this link, you can't click it from this stage. This is just a photograph. But you can do this on my Facebook page. If you find me at at Strictly Speaking Unfiltered, on Facebook, or just go to Bob France, because I have this up as a public post on Facebook as well, just Bob France, or go to the locals community. You can find it there as well. If you're watching our live stream right now or on replay on Rumble, there's a join button at the bottom there. So that'll take you to my screen, to my locals community, and you can find that there as well. But click that link and register for the event down in Columbus. You can drive yourself if you wish. If you really want to do that, you can drive down and, as long as you're registered, but take one small step onto the bus with us, and it's going to be a lot more fun. So we're going to try to fill up a bus here from Northeast Ohio. From what I understand, we've got about 30 seats left. Okay, 30 of the 50. So I need you to register right now and get your spot on that bus reserved so you don't get blocked out. That's number 2 on the list that you see on the screen before you right now. All right, so that second link is to reserve your seat on the bus. You see that, and then just wait for confirmation via email that you're on our bus and that you will be there for that fantastic event. And again, it's going to be held by Americans for Prosperity, and we're asking you to join AFP in some capacity as a volunteer. Find an AFP chapter near you and consider joining it and volunteering. There are so many different ways to help make this state greater. Go to BuckeyeBlueprint.com to find your place to volunteer, BuckeyeBlueprint.com. But again, don't forget to join us in Columbus on the 22nd. And yeah, I'd rather have you hop on the bus, Gus. Come on down with us. It's going to be a very, very good time. Strong patriotic messaging, celebrating America at 250 through and through. And I cannot wait for that. All right. So thanks, everybody. And I guess I should probably turn her back on now. There we go. So the Karmelo Anthony story, I've got Kirsanow coming up in about 7 minutes, by the way, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed there. The Karmelo Anthony case is kind of top of mind and front and center, but it's not the only thing, obviously. Let me hit this real quick, because elections are in the news right now. Elections as much as anything else, because we can't trust them. Bottom line is, we cannot trust them. We cannot trust them based on what we are watching happen in California right now. We cannot trust them based on what we saw happen in 2020 and in 2022 across the country. We cannot trust them because we can't verify and confirm that every person who votes is a citizen, because we can't pass the SAVE Act, the Save America Act. And we cannot trust that in the state of Ohio, our elections are true and honest and legitimate as well. Why? Dylan, I'm going to ask you to throw up number 4, please, and we'll talk about why. Because in this state of Ohio, we already require people to show driver's licenses when they show up to vote in person, right? Whenever you show up to vote. Thank you, Dylan. You've got to show an identification. Now, what is being discussed and what is being talked about is making that a little bit stronger by putting that in the Ohio Constitution. And there's an amendment that would put this on the ballot in November for the people of Ohio to be able to, and this is going through the legislative process, but to allow the people of Ohio to put this into the Constitution to make sure that no future, sorry, I'm dealing with some glitch stuff on X right now because I'm trying to open this up separately. Anyway, in the state of Ohio to put it in the Constitution so that some future legislature, future General Assembly cannot just say, yeah, you don't have to show ID anymore. Okay. It's really important, or particularly at the federal level, which is a legitimate threat. At the federal level, since we're not going to pass the Save America Act, if the Democrats end up winning the majority, they may outlaw voter identification. They may say nobody is allowed to request to request your identification before you vote ever again. Okay, so if we put it in Ohio law, it would supersede what the feds are doing. Is essentially what the goal is here. So I'm still loading this up, so bear with me. Apparently, when the whole computer froze up before, it kind of logged me out basically of all of my accounts, including my X account, which is not allowing me to see this the way I want to. All right, here we go. So this is Marcel Sturbich, and this is what we have loaded up. Hopefully, you're seeing as well. Marcel is the former Secretary of State candidate on the Republican primary side. Robert Sprague is now the nominee for that. Marcel is still fighting for election integrity, fighting very, very hard. And as he asks here in last night's post, as an Ohio voter, would you support a constitutional voter ID amendment like the simple and strong version below that requires state-issued photo ID for all voting methods and ensures photo identification for voting is only issued to U.S. citizens displaying citizenship on the ID? And the answer to that question has to be hell yes. But here's the problem. Compare that version above to the Ohio Senate's below version being hoisted upon, I think it means foisted upon the voter, that is legally complicated, confusing, and only applies to photo ID for voting in person. It excludes vulnerable mail-in voting from photo ID. Which version do you think real Donald Trump would support? Now, the reason that Marcel posted this is because real Donald Trump, President Trump posted on Truth Social yesterday, and I don't know if anybody put it up here on X or not. No, it looks like they have not. But what President Trump did is he posted on Truth Social, get this amendment passed. In fact, I might be able to pull this particular post up because it was in one of our group chats, our group signal chats here. Senator Bernie Moreno, as a matter of fact, shared President Trump's post on Truth Social, which said this. Now, this again is President Trump's words. Congratulations to the Ohio State Senate for passing Senate Joint Resolution 10, which would require voter ID in Ohio elections. Democrats fought hard against this, presumably so they can cheat. I am now asking all of my Republican friends in the State House to also pass this now. Put a constitutional amendment on the ballot so that the great people of Ohio can vote to enshrine voter ID in the state constitution. I will be watching and I'm strongly supportive of this resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And you say, okay, so what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that inherently, except for the fact that I don't believe the president has been made aware of the fact that this voter ID requirement would only be for people voting in person. And that mail-in voting would still be ripe with fraud. It would still be a big, big problem because people wouldn't have to show who they say they are, prove their identities, prove their citizenship and so forth if they want to vote by mail. And I don't know if the president was made aware that there is a revision to this bill, this resolution rather, that would indeed involve mail-in voting as well. Anybody who votes by way of absentee or any other method, they still have to prove they are who they say they are with photo identification. And so I brought this up since Senator Moreno shared that status and supported what President Trump wrote there. Senator Moreno wrote, quote, voter ID is common sense. That's why Democrat politicians oppose it. To my state house colleagues, let's get this done. He said this in support of what President Trump said. And so somebody informed Senator Moreno on our group chat about this, that, hey, what about the mail-in side? And Senator Moreno added, quote, they need to fix mail-in voting ID. And a lot of people said, yeah, absolutely. So I sent a text message to Senator Moreno yesterday evening. And I said, Senator, here, in fact, I'll read it to you. I said, good evening, Senator. Have to disagree with you on that State House resolution or State Senate resolution. I said House, that's my mistake. I said, there is a revision that simply must be included before they pass that and try to get it into the Constitution. We have to include voter ID for all votes, not just those in person. And the senator responded to me, agreed. I said that in the chat. And I said, yes, I know, but I saw that as an add-on comment. POTUS's post was to pass the resolution as is. We have to stop that until mail-in voting is added in, don't we? And Senator Moreno said, this is a direct quote to me and a response to me by text. I am going to speak to him in the AM and ask him to do a second truth post to say, quote, add voter ID for mail-in voting, end quote. And we'll see if he does it. And I said, that would be amazing, Senator. And then, of course, I had to throw in the pitch. If you have any time to discuss it live on the show this week, let me know when you're available. And indeed, the schedulers are working on that right now. The point to that is that the original message that President Trump was trying to promote is voter ID in the state of Ohio. Put that in the Constitution. That's a good thing. And he's right, of course. And Senator Moreno backing what President Trump said is also right and fine and well and good. But neither one of them made very clear, President Trump at all and Senator Moreno only in the chat, that we have to include the mail-in voting part of that as well. That's crucial, extraordinarily important that we get that down. And so his promise, Senator Moreno's promise to ask President Trump to really throw his weight behind this by way of another Truth Social post is something that must happen because it needs to get to the eyes of ORP Chair Alex Triantafilou. It needs to get to the eyes of Senate President Rob McCauley. It needs to get to the eyes of House Speaker Matt Huffman. It needs to be known in the legislature that the President of the United States says, hey, put it in the Constitution. I like it. Do not put it in the Constitution, though, until you say it's for all votes. All voters must show identification, photo identification, not just those in person, but also those who are casting mail-in ballots. And that's just what has to happen. And I think that can happen. I think that will happen eventually, but hopefully sooner rather than later. It's extremely important. All right. The other reason, of course, for I told you we got several election stories, is they have screwed Spencer Pratt in Los Angeles. They're trying to screw Steve Hilton in California more broadly. Excuse me. And voter fraud is just as bad as Medicaid fraud and some of the others. Nick Shirley is on the ground in California. I'm going to share some of that too. But I'm not going to share that with you until we bring our next guest to the program, which I'm going to do after I remind you about our friends in at Medicare, keeping Medicare simple. I'm talking, of course, about Mark King and his team. He's got some great people working for him in his office who are just ready and waiting for your call to greet you, to help you navigate the complexities of Medicare. You may not be in Medicare yet. Maybe you're turning 65 this year. If you are, you're going to find out how complex it is. And then you're going to be saying, can somebody explain this to me in English? Somebody can make it simple for me. Ta-da! Mark King has been keeping Medicare simple in such ways for nearly 40 years. Mark is a true patriot and supporter of, strictly speaking, Unfiltered as well. That's why I've been sending seniors to him for over 5 years since I met Mark. And every senior I talk to comes back and says, thank you. I now have a better Medicare plan than I had before. I'm paying less and I'm getting more services and benefits. That's the idea. And Mark will take your situation into consideration personally as well. You don't have to wait for the enrollment periods as well. You can call Mark at any time, 440-832-8936, and just say, hey, I want to go through it. Let's give my Medicare plan a look, see if I'm leaving anything on the table. Call Mark. He won't even charge you for these services. 440-832-8936. There's a great user-friendly website you see on your screen too right now, keepingmedicaresimple.com. Go to keepingmedicaresimple.com, but then call Mark. And by the way, you can talk to Mark in person too. He's going to be at some of the events that I'll be speaking at. Tomorrow night, I'm speaking at the Parma GOP at Adamo's in Brook Park. I'm looking forward to that great crowd. On tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Thursday night, I'll be at the Avon Lake Republican Club meeting, giving a speech there. I'm looking forward to that. A little bit later on this month, I'm going to be in Seven Hills with the GOP club there. Kirsanow and I are both going to actually be there at that one. And then, of course, on the 22nd, as you know, that's the big one. Hop on the bus. We want to see you in Columbus. Get on that bus with us. It'll depart Strongsville Monday the 22nd. At 3 p.m. You'll be back in your own car around 10 o'clock that night, and it's going to be a fantastic event in Columbus on the 22nd with AFP One Small Step. All right, I mentioned our next guest, and of course that is, since it is a Tuesday, our friend Peter Kirsanow joining us loud and clear, well, bright and clear anyway, video-wise. Let's hear how he sounds. Hi, Pete.
Can you hear me?
Beautiful. Look at that. That's 2 in a row, my friend. You're on a roll. How are things, Peter?
Man, I'm starting to get used to these things. Computers have been around for what, about 70 years now? I'm starting to get the hang of them.
Something like that, yeah. And it's so good to see you, Pete. And I'm so glad you did get the hang of it because your contributions to the show are so valuable. All right, so Peter, a lot of things I want to get into today. A little behind the scenes, inside baseball stuff. Pete texted me yesterday evening, late afternoon, evening, I guess. What time was this? Well, it was evening, 8:47 last night. Bob, I don't know anything, but if you want me to come on and fake it, I will. All right, that's a paraphrase, but not far off, right, Pete?
That's exactly right. I've not been up to speed on current events because I've been occupied with my various positions, and I'm getting close to the point where I'm going to be a free agent. At least I'll be on the Civil Rights Commission for another 6 years, but I'm getting very close to, I know I've been saying this for 5 years to everybody, but I'm very close to retirement from the practice of law. And I'm actually looking forward to it. Nearly half a century is enough.
Are you, is Andrew Barry aware of your free agent status?
I wish everyone would email him. All I need is one play. One play, that's all. If they saw me for one play, I'm sure I'd get signed to a free agent contract.
I have no doubt about that. If they saw you on the Hill, I'm sure they would do that. Okay. Peter, by the way, are you paying any attention at all to the NBA Finals?
No, I'm not really. I'm an NBA fan, but for the last several years, I don't know, for some reason, it's not been something that's captured my attention. If the Cavs, go to the finals, I'll do that. And I think the Cavs have got an interesting team, but they're not there right now. So, but no, I haven't.
Okay. You're not missing anything. Neither have I, other than the fact that I know who's playing. And I've developed a rooting interest in this that has nothing to do with basketball. It has nothing to do with the Knicks players or the Spurs players. And like you, with pretty much all professional sports, once they all went woke, I said, see ya. That's it. Deuces. I'm out. I'm done. And I've largely been that way with very, very few exceptions. The Indians in the playoffs, paying attention to that a little bit.
Indians?
Yes.
Who are they?
Yeah. That's our Cleveland baseball team. And do not ever try to tell me otherwise.
Guardians. What is a Guardian? I've been living in Cleveland my entire life, 3/4 of a century. I used to cross the bridge with my father because we lived on the other side of the bridge. I saw those statues there. I didn't know they were Guardians. Who knows that they're Guardians? And by the way, who cares? This is nuts. 3 people care that they were called the Indians. Only 3, that's all. And they all showed up every opening day, and then we have to change the name because of that. I'm sorry. We had hearings before the Civil Rights Commission shows you how serious we are. About 20 years ago, we had hearings on mascots and team names and things like that, like the Redskins, the Indians, and stuff like that. And here's what we found. All of the white woke activists were against it. They thought it was an abomination. We had chieftains and others from various tribes come in and they say, no, we love this stuff. And they kept emphasizing this. It's not an insult to them. In fact, one, I still remember, but he said, you know, if we don't have this kind of a reference, a lot of people are going to forget about us. Unless you live in the Southwest or maybe up in North Dakota where there are substantial Native American presence, most people, like in Cleveland, they never encounter a Native American or an Indian, however you wanted to call him. So they like that. But no, our woke betters have got to, they've got to eliminate all the fun.
100% right. And you know what? The one part, only part you left out about that, by the way, was a lot of those tribes that have been consulted about these things and about Native American names and so forth, nicknames and so forth. They have said, please keep them because they literally keep their tribes and their existence and their culture alive in the forefront. Because if they wipe out all these references to Indians and to Native Americans and so forth, they literally feel like they're being forgotten by government, forgotten by the rest of the population and so forth. So they literally were not only saying, in many cases, they see it as an honor. They want to name their teams after us. It's because they like us, they revere us, and that's very, very true. But also because they want to be remembered. They want to be in the public consciousness, and wiping out their names and so forth doesn't help them.
Exactly. I don't purport to speak on behalf of Native Americans. I'm simply reciting what was said to us in the hearings that we had. And it was uniformly that, as I said, that one tribal chieftain, I can't remember his name and I don't even remember the tribe, this was 20 years ago, emphasized that exact point. And, we had other witnesses too who said the same thing. They were the only people who were opposed to it were, these woke white professors and historians who thought that they knew better.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And by the way, as far as the Guardians thing too, there was a comedian that I saw, and I don't recall his name, but it was just when I was doing the doom scroll that you're smart enough not to do because you don't have social media, but scrolling through videos, and once you see a comedian that you like, and if you watch its routine for 15, 20, 30, 40 seconds, whatever, the algorithms kick in and they say, oh, he liked that. So they'll give you more and more and more. So one of them was it just grabbed my attention immediately. And he said, how many people here, I can't remember the pretext of it, but they got to the baseball nickname thing. And then he said, what happened to the Indians? Guardians? What the hell is a guardian? And people are all, booing the idea of guardians and so forth. He said, what's a guardian? He said, a guardian is somebody who says, hey, be home by 11. You're not my real dad. And that was the kind of guardian. And I just, so much funnier than I could just retell it the way I just did. But it's so true. That's what a guardian is in some circumstances. Traffic guardians, doesn't matter. It sounds stupid.
And aside from changing the name, can you think of a more, limp mascot name for any team in the NFL, NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball? I mean, Guardian? Come on. I like things like Vikings, Braves, Raiders, Guardians.
Well, they wanted it to be something local, which I understand, a reference in some way. I mean, obviously, the Indians was local as hell. It was a player, Louis Alexis, which is who they honor. But so they wanted it to, I get the idea they wanted it to be something Cleveland-y. Why they would choose the statues on a bridge, I don't know. That's except for this, Pete, and I said this at the time. And I even asked the baseball operations guys if they did this, and they denied it vociferously. But to me, I think they knew that the outrage over the loss of Indians was going to be so strong. They wanted it to make it as close to Indians as they could. And Guardians, D-I-A-N-S, it's similar. And it's like, it's not that difference. Indians, Guardians, that's the only reason I can think of, because what you just said is true. Not too many more limp ideas as far as, names come to mind. I think they wanted it to sound and be as close to Indians as they could.
Yeah. Well, look, I have no brief against those individuals. They're probably very fine individuals. I just think if you polled Indians fans, more than 9 out of 10 would say no way. And it's tradition also. You want to there's the continuity that comes from the association of a particular team, from grandfathers to fathers to sons. There's so much involved in that, and from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
I think it was a mistake, but it's a done deal now. It's not going to go back to the Indians anytime, at least in my lifetime, I don't think.
No, they're that ship has sailed and we've lost it, and it is what it is. So Peter, to the point of why we got off onto that tangent, I was asking you about the NBA Finals, and I find myself rooting, even in games or sports that I've stopped following, not for players or teams, but for the cities. And I was already disgusted with the fact that the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and the lunatic leftist supporters and voters of socialism in Seattle got to celebrate and be the city of champions. They got to have a parade, and you know who the mayor of Seattle is right now, socialist Katie Wilson. And now we've got New York on the verge of winning an NBA title under socialist Zoran Mamdani. And then last night after the game, a bunch of the New York Knicks thug fans went out there and started brawling with cops. So I find myself, when it comes to pro sports, from which I have largely disassociated myself, I don't want cities filled with people that are just so anti-American and so disgustingly leftist that they're voting for socialists. They're voting to undermine everything that this republic was founded upon, the bedrock. And then they get to celebrate. So I find myself just saying, I want them to be as miserable as we are here in Cleveland with their teams. I don't want the Knicks to be able to celebrate. I don't want the Rams in LA, after what they just did to Spencer Pratt and what they're doing to election integrity. I don't want them to do anything. I don't want the Seahawks. You understand my point? I find myself allowing politics and political, ideology to guide my loyalties in sports.
Yeah, I think almost everybody has a sense of that. I mean, I know there's an element of that I have for a long time. Well, there are a lot of different teams I don't like for reasons similar to that, because the players that were on the team had expressed certain sentiments that I consider, like the Colin Kaepernick. I think most people identify with that because that was such a big deal. But, I try to get beyond that because I want to enjoy the sport. And here's the good news. I think the vast majority of professional athletes and college athletes that I've met or know are on the right, maybe not avowedly so. Most of these folks, like most people, most normal people want to be left alone. That's the beauty of America. Individuality, we can be left alone. The government doesn't have to dictate everything that we do. But to the extent anybody is political, sports personalities in the main are far more to the right than almost any other occupational group. That's been my finding. That's been the finding of, frankly, several other studies on this. So I think that you get as with almost everything else, the woke folks, the people on the left, are the folks that make the most noise. The people who are incompetent and can't do anything are the ones that are constantly waving their flags and saying, this is what needs to be done. So I'm not, I prefer that athletes and sports teams just stay out of politics entirely, because on a Sunday afternoon, to the extent I watch any football, I want to do it without any kind of patina of, well, that guy's on the left, or that guy supports Barack Obama, or something that would otherwise make me, dislike him.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah. And, it's like, there he is. Some of that bleeds through for me too. If Greg Popovich was still the coach of the Spurs, I'd be in real trouble here, because I don't want the Knicks to win, because I don't want those fans, and I don't want Zoran Mamdani celebrating, but I wouldn't want Greg Popovich, who is an avowed America hater as well. One of the, is an ever-Trumper, constantly in press conferences in which he's supposed to be talking about basketball, waxing political and attacking conservatism and so forth. And so I wouldn't want him to win either. Steve Kerr, Golden State Warriors, had their little mini dynasty there. Rabid leftist, and is not shy about preaching, again, from the basketball pulpit about his political beliefs. So, it's those individuals kind of help decide my rooting interests as well. But aside from the athletes and coaches themselves, it's just the cities, the voters, the people there that I don't want to be able to enjoy that success, because they don't deserve it. Like I said, especially the New Yorkers, who are possibly on the verge of winning this thing now. All right, Pete, this is segue time. Here's my segue. Knicks and Spurs, it's New York and San Antonio, Texas. Let's stay in Texas. See how I segued there? To Frisco, Texas. You're following the Karmelo Anthony trial. Yesterday, the defense rested. The defense says he was acting in self-defense when he killed Austin Metcalf, and then tried to dispose of the murder weapon and then flee. And this self-defense case, Peter, they rested yesterday without letting the defendant tell the jury about what he was afraid of and what his reason for self-defense murder was. Pete, if you've been following it, give me your thoughts. Closing arguments today. This is a racially charged case, by the way. Give me your view.
Yeah, I haven't been following it closely, but I have the elements that you just described, I'm aware of, and I've heard that, and I know that, of course, that Karmelo Anthony, and I have a difficult time with the name, by the way, because I keep thinking of the New York Knicks, right?
Of course.
But the fact that they didn't, again, I don't want to prejudge, and I don't necessarily, know their strategy, but this is from a 30,000-foot perspective. Given the fact that all of this evidence was out there as to what happened, it's almost irrefutable that he plunged, that he did this. The fact that they didn't put him on the stand, to me, my opinion, is pretty damning. You'd want some contrary evidence, but they decided not to do that. Now, if you think that, as a defense counsel, if you think that the plaintiff hasn't, or in this case, the prosecution hasn't met their burden of proof, then of course you rest rather than, you let sleeping dogs lie. But in this case, the evidence was overwhelming, at least in my estimation, again, from 30,000 feet and just watching news reports.
Well, there's a confession too, just to be clear. I mean, It is irrefutable that he did it, because he said when he was, taken, no alleged about it. Yeah, I did it. He said he did it, but he said he did it in self-defense. So if that's the case, you've got a confession, and it's really only a matter of, was he right to do it or not? How do you not have the defendant who's claiming self-defense tell the jury what he was so afraid of?
Yeah. And it speaks for itself. Again, I don't want to prejudge, but I think you and all of your audience members have come to the same conclusion I have. And unfortunately, we don't want to prejudge, but, you see things, you make certain judgments. By the way, that you've got to filter through the bias of the media. Almost every media report on almost every issue, as we know and we complain about constantly to the point of boredom, is that the media is always going to cast things in the woke fashion, from the slant of the left. So I think most of us have incorporated into our thought process and evaluation of any circumstance, and we've come to a conclusion. I was in the courtroom, but he walked into the other team's tent.
Yep.
You and I have been athletes, Bob. Can you imagine somebody walking into your locker room?
Nope.
From an opposing team? I mean, that is, I can't think of anything that's more provocative, confrontational, insightful. So, for someone to do something like that, he's there for a reason. And I mean, the facts, they speak for themselves.
Well, the biggest part of it, Peter, is not only did he go into that other team's tent and sit down and then dare them to make him leave, which is what he did. 15 different times he was told to leave by somebody else in that tent, the Memorial High School tent. And he basically said, touch me and see what happens. In other words, I dare you to move me out of here. But the fact that he brought a knife to a track meet, Pete, a knife. Who does that? Who does that? Who arms himself with a knife in his gym bag, where he's probably got his socks and his towel and his water bottle and his track spikes and everything else? Who puts a knife in there too, and then, according to the witnesses, keeps his hand inside that bag while daring them to move him? He's got his hand on his knife. and is waiting for somebody to try to come up to him and make him leave their tent. He's provoking, clearly, a confrontation. And then as soon as somebody comes up and puts his hands on them, he pulls the knife out and shoves a knife into the chest. And this is what the evidence from that witness stand bore out over the course of the 3-day trial. So, that's what I don't understand. And I wanted to ask you 2 questions about this. One, the first degree part of this, because according to some of the legal experts watching the trial closer than you or I are, they're saying that it might be a hard burden for the prosecution to get first degree, and the judge might allow the jury to find him guilty of manslaughter instead. And I have a big problem with that because of what I just said, the fact that he brought a knife to a track meet and then intentionally goaded and provoked somebody in their tent to do something to him. So to me, his first degree, his premeditation was very clear, but I want your opinion. And then secondly, Peter, the racial component of this, the fact that there are Black activists outside, the fact that there are Black activists who donated over $600,000 to his family because he killed a white kid, and they kind of figured that's one of our guys. Yep, let's back him. And now there are Black activists outside of that trial chanting about killing crackers. The only good cracker is a dead cracker. And I'm saying it the way they were screaming it. And that's what we do. We kill crackers. So, and so there are these organizations, NAACP and others, that are out there basically saying, you know what, we stand with one of our own. I don't care if he's guilty or not, but he's Black, and we're out for Black, causes.
Well, I think organizations such as that, when you take a position on an issue such as this on the basis of race and race alone, and that's what it seems to be for some of these organizations, then you have completely disqualified yourself from any further discussion on any issue related to race. It's really, we've gotten to this point over a period of time, and race relations in this country and all matters related to crime and race have been so fraught for so long. But we've had I can't think of a time when we've been, frankly, more polarized in those terms. The left and certain grievance groups automatically side with one side, usually the perp. And then everybody else looks at it from the standpoint of, why did this need to happen? What about the victim? So I really don't like these individuals who are trying to politicize or racialize an incident such as this. You have somebody who is dead, and yet not much focus other than from immediate family members is being placed on the deceased individual. All the focus seems to be on the history of racism in this country. One day, maybe we'll transcend that. It's not going to be anytime in the near future, I don't think. We've had George Floyd, we had all these different incidents, Michael Brown, and always immediately you get these activists who come in, most of whom have, a room temperature IQ and try to make some money off of it. You've got these folks who are predators who come in immediately and try to benefit off of it. And I think most Americans are smart enough and frankly, moral enough to dispense with that and to discount those individuals.
Yeah. Are you familiar, Peter, at all with the Next Generation Action Network and Dominique Alexander?
No.
I wasn't either. Like I said, it's similar, I think, to Sharpton's group and NAACP to a certain extent and so forth. But they're the ones that are out there making the most noise about this. And saying the criminal justice system is geared towards being anti-Black and trying to lock up more Black defendants and so on and so forth. And that's the reason they support people like Karmelo Anthony. You even had one prospective juror, and this is the last thing I'll ask you, Peter, touching on your expertise as an attorney. And I know you're a labor lawyer, not a criminal lawyer, but nonetheless, there are no Black jurors. Frisco, Texas, as I understand it, is roughly about 10% Black, so it's not very many. So the chances of getting, a jury pool that's going to include, some mandatorily some Black jurors, it might be tough to do. But specifically, there are no Black jurors on this trial that is racially and somewhat, tinged, and some are saying that is going to, lead to an unfair trial. That this is, this can't be done without a quote unquote jury of your peers, meaning some people who are black on the jury. From a legal perspective, give me your assessment of that. And then also just consider the fact that at least one of the black jurors that was questioned, about his ability to be impartial, said out loud, he said, "I can't see me putting no brother in jail."
Yeah.
That just as matter of fact as that, Peter. So your thoughts on the fact that it's an all-white jury in this case where Karmelo Anthony is going to be judged?
A couple things. One is a disclaimer. First is I've forgotten much of what anybody actually ever knew about these kinds of things. And I can't remember the case name, but there's an issue with respect to whether or not during voir dire, that is during jury selection, counsel for either side makes determinations on the basis of race. And if that happens, that could compromise the jury. It could compromise the outcome. It's a basis for appeal, if anything else. Personally, from the standpoint of whether or not a jury composed majority of one race or another makes a difference, I think having been before juries, I have tremendous respect for juries. And that seems to be a statement that is almost required to be made. But I actually believe that. And every time I've always been really, and what I do is after I have a jury trial, I typically, and I think most, if not many attorneys do the same thing, I typically go into the jury room afterwards and talk to the jurors to get an assessment of what persuaded them, what worked, what didn't work. I want to know the thought process so I can utilize that the next time I have a trial, and also when I'm making opening and closing arguments, which, by the way, are not necessarily that persuasive. Opening argument, I think, is much more persuasive than closing arguments are, depending on the facts that are adduced. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be no time in the near future, we're going to get beyond race when it comes to any matters related to criminal prosecutions. It's just not going to happen. You have too many interests at stake, and that is the Al Sharpton type interest groups that have a interest, financial and otherwise, in fanning the flames of, well, this must be racist. So, and it makes for, frankly, more inflammatory television and media. So, you've got these folks at various news outlets who want to dwell upon that, to some extent because they've got nothing else to really talk about.
Peter, let's move to elections. Primary day today in Maine. Want to get your thoughts on the Graham Plattner story as it has evolved literally day by day by day. We are finding out more and more of what a reprehensible, disgusting, filthy slime of a human being this person is. Just generally, every single day there's something new. And yet, Democrats in that state are so driven, and Democrats generally across the country are so driven to stop Donald Trump's agenda, to win back control of the Senate and the House by any means necessary. As long as he will help them beat Trump, they don't care if they elect Hitler himself, which is what Plattner is very, very close to being. I want to talk about that. But then as long as we're talking about primary days, we're in day what now? 8 or 9? 8, I guess it would be, of the Democrat primary, of the California primary day. That was last Tuesday. It is now the next Tuesday, so we're 8 days on, and they're just now getting around to start to declaring some winners. Among them, of course, Karen Bass and another radical Mamdani-like socialist who somehow surged after suspending her campaign, or not suspending her campaign, what's the word? Conceding. Gave a concession speech on election night last Tuesday and said she's out because it was Karen Bass and Spencer Pratt without question. But after, 8 days of manufacturing, counting, finding, and so forth, new votes, suddenly this socialist skyrocketed by tens of thousands of votes that Spencer Pratt could not even touch. And so now we have we've got 2 Democrats in the race for Los Angeles mayor. So Pete, 2 different stories there, 2 different places. Take them in either order you wish.
Yeah, well, isn't it curious that every time we've got one of these recounts, it always seems that all of the found votes are Democrat votes. I'm just pointing it out. I mean, it's frankly every single time every single time. And the longer the recounts go, the more Democrat votes come. How many Republican votes are coming in? You hardly ever see that at all. It may be that, frankly, they try to throw a few in so it doesn't look so ridiculous, but it's still nonetheless ridiculous. So, I don't know what happened there, but I know this, that Karen Bass and Nithya, whatever her name is, they're more of the same. They're going to drive. California used to be a great state not that long ago, frankly. I'd go there. It was a great state on a whole host of levels. And now it's turning into, in many precincts, into a third world hellhole. And that's a function of governance, because they've got all the resources in the world. They've got everything they need there. And nonetheless, it's going downhill. How does that happen? Well, it happens because they adopt the precepts of progressivism, the Democratic Party, and everything goes down. You look at the various urban centers, and I'm going off tangent here, but there's a meme to some extent that's in media, in at least on the internet, where there will be before and after pictures of various major cities. And that is, when you look at Chicago, Detroit is the most famous one, where you see the 1950 photo of Detroit, and it looks like a utopia. And then you look at it today. But the bottom line is that progressive governance, progressive ideals, and ideas are devastating. They don't work. And it's not just that they don't work, they're fundamentally destructive. So I view that Karen Bass and the other person is just more of the same. California is going to continue to sink itself into, especially with Gavin Newsom, the idiot policies that they have there are going to drive that beautiful, resourceful state into oblivion. And it bothers me from the standpoint that if you look at them objectively, Spencer Pratt at least articulated certain ideas and visions for improving the place. And I didn't see that from Bass or the other person. I can't remember her name, frankly.
Nithya Raman is her name, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Spencer Pratt, as of Friday, had a 40,000 vote lead over her to finish second in this race and make it to the runoff. By Sunday, they had found enough ballots for Raman that she overtook him by 3,000.
How do you find ballots, by the way? Where are they?
43,000 vote change, Peter. 43,000 in 2 days.
Yeah. How do you find them? Where are they? Under the cushions? We remember a number of things. Number one, for those of you who are old enough to remember, and it's not that, in my estimation, not that long ago, but the 2000 election, when it seemed that, they kept counting and counting and counting, and Al Gore got closer and closer and closer. It's always the Democrat who they somehow get more votes. What happens? You've had other situations very similar to that, where they keep counting and counting and counting. We had the last presidential election where they did that. We had the 2000 election. You remember the woman in Atlanta, or it was in Georgia, who told everybody that they had to leave because there was a flood in the building. Okay, yeah. Everyone had to leave, and as soon as they leave, because she's not smart enough to remember that there are cameras, and minutes that they're gone, they look around, reach under the table, they had a cloth over it, and start pulling out boxes of ballots, and all of a sudden, Joe Biden starts getting more and more votes. This is something that occurs on a regular basis, both at the local, state, and federal level. And we have to devote far more resources to this. I know that President Trump has gotten his voting section to be more aggressive on this, and the media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, are apoplectic about that. Why would you be apoplectic about trying to ensure voter integrity? The only person who would be apoplectic is somebody who has something to hide, or somebody who has gotten some benefit out of making sure that there's no oversight of what's going on with respect to our voting processes.
Yeah, and let's talk about that oversight. Let's talk about, again, California just for a moment. This doesn't directly impact us here in Ohio, except that it does in a way, because congressional seats in California lead to majorities and so on and so forth. So we kind of have a role in this too, as well, or at least an interest in this as well. Dylan, pull up clip number. Where in the world is it now? It is number. It's the Nick Shirley one where I don't know where it went now. All of a sudden, the Doris one. Number 3. I see it. It's number 3. Pull up clip number 3 for Pete so we can watch it, and for everybody else to watch this as well. So Pete, in California, you probably have seen over the last few days, for people who did not have identification at registration when they registered to vote, they were allowed to show a lot of very interesting things, including gym memberships. If you've got a gym membership card that says, see, this is who I say I am, I swear, because you can't get those just anywhere, right? Then you're able to vote legally in the state of California. California, of course, has one of the highest illegal immigrant populations in the country. It has one of the largest legal immigrant populations in the country. Legal, but not citizens and not eligible to vote. And so you would think that they've got to be, do a really good job of keeping tight their voter rolls. One would think anyway. Well, that's the setup for Nick Shirley in this latest video. It's only about a minute and a half long. But Peter, watch Nick Shirley following the voter rolls to the address of one of the voters listed on the rolls. Somebody who's voted 51 times in 51 different elections. Watch and see what happens here. Go ahead, Dylan.
So how old is this person who's eligible to vote here inside the United States, inside the state of California?
126 based on the Secretary of State.
And this is Doris.
Yeah.
Now we're going to see if Doris is home. Are you Doris?
She's right here. Yes.
Hello, Doris.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
We're just going through the voting rolls here, and we're just confirming anybody who's above the age of 100 years old. And right here, it says you're 126 years old.
No, you got the wrong house. That's a lie.
Are you Doris Wood?
Yeah, but you got the wrong house. I'm Doris, but you got the wrong place. That's the wrong information. All that stuff. No, that's wrong.
Oh, here, I can show you if you like.
No, it's just that it's wrong.
How come you think here in California they're just messing up on all these voting rolls here?
I don't know, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it says you voted in 51 elections, Doris.
No, not me.
Really?
I'm not no 100-some years old.
I know.
I said I was.
I just want to make sure you're not 126 years old.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it really does say you're 126 years old here.
No.
Says,
Who did this be 126? That don't even make sense.
I know. That's what the Secretary of State says.
Well, the Secretary of State is wrong.
Okay, well.
Put it like this. I was born in 1940. So you figure that out.
All right, Doris. You have a good evening.
So, Pete, one thing I wish Nick Shirley had done there would be to ask her, do you vote? How many times have you voted? When is the last time you voted? Something like that, because her name and her address were accurate. The fact that she's 126 and has voted 51 times, obviously not so. How deep do you think the fraud? We know about the Medicaid fraud. We know about the hospice services. We know about the, child care service fraud and everything else in places like California and Minnesota and Ohio. But in California, it is extraordinarily deep. All of that stuff is being exposed. But the voter registration fraud, the fact that they have somebody that's 126 years old still on the rolls, and they're claiming that person is alive and voting at that particular address. So how deep do you think the fraud when it comes to elections really runs when it comes to Democrat states?
Unfortunately, I think it's deep, broad, and rampant. And I think that for several reasons. Number one is, again, I'm on the Civil Rights Commission. This is what we do. Nobody pays attention to us when it's inconvenient. When I mean nobody, I mean the major media and leftists, but I repeat myself. I've had on your show, by the way, Bob, J. Christian Adams, my colleague on the Civil Rights Commission, former attorney with the voting section of the Department of Justice. He is now he now has his own organization that does things related to voting rights, that brings actions on the basis of violations of voting rights. And he will tell you how deep and wide the fraud is. This is not something that's minor. The media and Democrats, if I repeat myself, continually try to tell you this. And unfortunately, they have broad sway. And Republicans, as usual, are asleep at the switch. They need to make the message known. They've got to keep hammering it over and over again, because without doing that, without countering the left's message, there's not going to be an impetus to change things so that honesty and integrity are brought back to these elections. And it also depends on states. Democrat states are notoriously bad on this. California, of course, New York, Illinois, I mean, they're notoriously bad. And I wish I had in front of me, the copious amounts of evidence that we've had, documentary evidence showing this. Consider this, and I don't remember the exact date. I used to have this on the tip of my tongue, but again, this is from evidence that was adduced. I think it was in 2004 or 2008 election. In Ohio alone, 186 elections were decided by one vote. One vote. So you don't need to have some kind of massive organization to engage in voter fraud to change the outcome of an election. All you need is just a little tweak here and there. That's how profound and dangerous this problem is. And the left has turned this into a cottage industry. This is what they do. And when you see them, being very casual about the outcome of election, that's because, unfortunately, they know that they've got a certain ace up their sleeve. It pains me to say that, and I sound like, I should be wearing a tinfoil hat, and I wish I were. But for your audience, those are the facts. I'm sorry, and any leftist who tries to tell you otherwise is gaslighting you big time.
Yeah, no, you don't. I don't think you sound like that at all, Pete. Because you're just observing the facts, and we have to draw some conclusions, but in some cases they're as plain as day. So it is what it is. The fraud is deep, it is rampant, and it doesn't take a massive machine. You're right. Sometimes it's only a vote or two difference, and saying that somebody's casting ballots for this woman who is supposedly 126 years old, and it's obviously not her. And that's a problem. So how many of those cases are there? How many elections have been swayed by those types of things? That's what needs to happen. We need to get to the bottom of that. Now, in Maine, we're not so much concerned about voter fraud and the voter rolls. I have no idea what they're like up there. This is just simply about the candidate. What does Graham Plattner's rise, despite being one of, I think, objectively, one of the worst people in the world. And I'm sorry, but the Totenkopf Nazi death head tattoo that he wore for 18 years while bragging about it, the sexting on the Kick app, which is trolling for girlfriends as a married man, with the predominant number of girls on that site are between the ages of 13 and 24. The allegations of abuse and mistreatment of women, everything that there is to know about this guy, you're disgusted by. And not to mention the fact that he's a communist. He's a communist with a fascist Hitler, Nazi tattoo. Talk about a dream candidate for the Democrats. What does it say about the Democrats that they are willing to rally around this guy? Everybody except for, it would appear, John Fetterman. But Democrats like Ro Khanna from California coming all the way across the country to campaign for this guy, Bernie Sanders championing him. You've got left-wing voters saying, well, everybody deserves a second chance. He made a mistake with that tattoo. He didn't really understood what it meant, and now he covered it up, so it's okay now. What does it say to you about the Democrat Party that they are willing to rally around a guy that, like I said, I think is objectively just a horrible, horrible human being?
Tells you that they're frauds, they're hypocrites, and they're willing to win, do anything to win. That's all it is. This guy, before he began running as a Democrat, if you didn't know what party he was with and you simply gave this a description to your ordinary person on MSNBC or CNN, would be horrified. They recoil in horror and say, oh, he must be some MAGA guy on steroids. This is how they stereotypically paint conservatives or MAGA folks. That's their whole thing. And here's a guy who embodies everything that they purportedly hate. And yet, because he is their vehicle toward power, they're going to excuse that. They're going to say, no, nothing to see here, folks. That tells you really how corrupt that party is. Hey, back when I was in college, for a moment in time, I was a Democrat. Okay, again, that was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But I had to leave as soon as I found out what they were. And this is back when the Democratic Party was at least, semi-normal. Now it is a flat out, not just socialist, but communist party. That's what Graham Plattner is. He proudly said he was a communist. It is This is a frightening. I don't want to understate it, frankly. I think we have to take this extremely seriously, which I know most of us are. But what we're seeing here in academia, in media, in many precincts of government is the advance of socialism, communism. And if we don't watch out, and I've been saying this, and a lot of us have been saying this for a long time, because this is inculcated in our kids, you've got the teachers' unions and others who are promoting this ideology. And unfortunately, they do it in ways that parents are not even aware of. Even parents who are attentive don't even see it. But if you go talk to, as I have, some of these young kids at these schools, you'll be astonished at how they've embraced this. And this is more of the same. You've got these individuals, Bernie Sanders, the millionaire communist. Bernie Sanders is, among other things, a despicable human being who's stupid on steroids. The guy vacationed in the Soviet, I mean, I can't, look, as somebody who has family members who were killed and imprisoned by communists, I don't give any grief to clowns like that. And Graham Plattner, he plays or he cosplays as a masculine guy. I understand he served in the military, big effing deal, excuse my language. You and I know folks like that. I know folks who serve in the military who would kick his butt any single day of the week. I would do it gladly, even though I'm 3 times his age. It just makes me want to vomit. Is that clear enough, Bob?
Yeah, it is, Pete. And no, it's a great answer. I concur with everything you just said. I want to know, I've heard some expert analysts trying to figure out why they would bring this guy up as their candidate to take on Susan Collins. And the some of the answers that people have offered is that the Democrat Party has been hemorrhaging voters who are male,
right,
and quote unquote masculine,
right.
in large part because they have described masculinity as being toxic, and it's, men are a part of the patriarchy, men are part of the problem, and white men particularly have really surged to strong leaders like Donald Trump, as opposed to weak betas like Joe Biden and very effeminate Barack Obama and so forth. That the Republican Party has kind of really claimed the strong male white voter, and they're looking for their own like that. So they gravitated to this guy as if he's kind of fits that bill because he doesn't dress in a suit, and he's a rough and tough former Marine, so he can pull some of the masculine male vote back to the Democrats, even though they hate masculinity, that he's the guy. So much so that they're willing to overlook the Nazi history. And again, I don't care who you are. And here's the ultimate juxtaposition. That's not the right word, but it's just a conflict in his narrative. He's a military historian. Okay. He calls himself a real student of military history, but he says he didn't know what that tattoo was. He wore it for 18 years and didn't find out until he ran for the Senate. And somebody told him, that's a Nazi tattoo. How the hell does the party gravitate toward that particular guy? Because
that's their vision. They've talked about toxic masculinity, and they've embraced, as you just mentioned, beta males. They think that Graham Plattner appeals to males. They want to have somebody like that, and they're willing to overlook, in the process of seeking power, almost everything, as long as they get somebody with a D behind their name into office. That's what they do. Republicans, on the other hand, don't do that, for better or worse. And I think it's mainly for better, although it's worse from the standpoint of winning elections. But Republicans, in the main, would not tolerate that. Democrats will tolerate almost anything for the advancement of their party and for the acquisition of power.
You said that Graham Plattner appeals to males. That's the Democrat Party's hope. I don't know if that's the case, but I think in the reverse, it's true. Males apparently appeal to Graham Plattner. Graham, you know what I'm about to tell you, right? People have heard this part of the Graham Plattner narrative. Again, today is the primary in Maine. Today's the day we'll find out if Graham Plattner is going to be the nominee that takes on Susan Collins for that seat in the United States Senate. Graham Plattner, according to one of the girlfriends, former girlfriends, or women that he has seen, told the New York Times, declared that if anybody were to ever break into his house, he would rape them, not shoot them to protect his family, not hold him at gunpoint to wait for the police. He would rape them, but, quote, not in a gay way, but to show I'm dominant. Peter, have you ever thought you wanted to show your dominance over another guy by shoving your body into him? Because that's what Graham Plattner says.
Yeah, it tells you as much about Democrats as it does about Graham Plattner. I mean, it's just
How's
sick.
that not disqualifying?
It is disqualifying, except for Democrats who, in the acquisition of power, seeking power, will tolerate almost anything. It's truly an astonishing thing. Can you imagine if a Republican suggested anything like that? I mean, the media and the Democrats would be all over it. Media, but I repeat myself. I forgot to say my typical line. So, this really exposes, no pun intended, what the Democrats of 2026 are all about. And they still have the protection of the media, but I think that patina, that shield, is becoming less and less tenable. I think that they're having a more difficult time because, I mean, he's such a just pathetic and repulsive character that I think even with the protection of the media, it's going to become clear. Now, does that mean that he's not going to win? I don't know. I think that my personal belief is if the Democratic Party was rational, and there are rational players, you've mentioned a few in the past, Rahm Emanuel's maybe one of the more rational folks, they're all going to say, we can't do this because it really besmirches the entire party. We've got to take a hit here. We can't run this candidate. But I think that there are those who are so rabid in the acquisition of power. This is an anti-Trump vote. They've become so deranged by Trump.
They all are, aren't they? I mean, literally,
Yeah.
if you oppose Trump's agenda, we will vote for you. That's what they're
Exactly.
saying. We don't care if you literally are an ex-murderer, still with blood on your hands from your crime. You're saying you vote against Trump, you've got my vote.
Exactly. If you had asked a question about Graham Plattner before anyone knew who he was 8 years ago of a Democrat, would you vote for somebody with a Nazi tattoo who talks about raping men and matters of like that? And they would recoil in horror. But now, fast forward in the age of Trump, and if you have somebody who can oppose the Trump agenda, they're all on board. It's troubling to me, or it's disappointing to me. Maybe that's not strong enough a word, that more people aren't repulsed by that. But this is where we are right now.
You know, Ben Shapiro said, is there anything that Graham Plattner can do or be that will make the Democrats not like him? I mean, the Nazi tattoo, the communism, the sexting of women just shortly after he was married, the getting on the sexting app with young kids, 13 to 24-year-olds, the abuse of women and so forth. Is there anything he can do that would make the Democrats say, no, we can't vote for that guy? And the only answer is, as Ben Shapiro said, if he wore the Star of David. Put the Star of David on and suddenly they'll run from him.
Yeah, the problem for Democrats, I think, is, and it's not a big problem because, as I said, they're going to get shielded by the media, is now you've got the example of Graham Plattner and their support for him. So it's going to be that much more difficult for them to continue to say that certain candidates are beyond the pale or disqualified because they've got these certain characteristics. Because this is so this is one where they can't sweep it under the rugs. This guy's been so well promoted and publicized that's going to be that much more difficult. Not that they won't make the attempt, and they're going to be, full court press in doing so, but for ordinary Democrats out there, those who aren't quote unquote political, those who go about their daily lives and happen to be Democrat, or maybe it's a legacy Democrat, they've been Democrats all their lives, or their parents were Democrats, so they check that box. I think they have to look at this, and many of them, I think, will look at this and say, wait a minute, is this what I want to be affiliated with? This stuff? I know I'm being told to be, on board with this by the media and others, but this is not me. I don't want my kids like this. I don't want my associates like this. So I think the Democrats, in their just maniacal quest for power, may be making a little bit of a mistake here. It's clearly a mistake, but from a political perspective, from their vantage point, from their viewpoint, they may be making a mistake. And I think the Rahm Emanuels and others of the world recognize that.
Well, the difficulty for us is, they can run whoever they want, including Satan himself, which Graham Plattner is not far off of, it would appear. And we find ourselves still having to vote for Susan Collins. Susan Collins, who is one of the worst Republicans, one of the worst members of the Senate we have had in decades. And we have to support her because there's nobody else to run against her in the primary. She was one of the 4 that just killed the Save America Act. We had Vote-A-Rama. We had an opportunity last week to pass the Save America Act and to make sure only citizens can register and only and voters must show their identification. And 4 Democrats killed it. 4 Democrats. We didn't need 60. We only needed the 50. And Vice President Vance during that Vote-A-Rama. And 4 Democrats killed it. McConnell and Tillis were both on their way out, and then Murkowski and Collins. And here we are.
I know you're being
playful
for
Susan Collins. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're being playful, or maybe it was a Freudian slip, but those guys weren't Democrats. They were ostensibly Republicans who, Bob, I agree with you, in effect, they're Democrats.
Yes, they are. So sorry about the slip, but those are 4 Republicans who voted with the Democrats to stop the Save America Act. So and we have to reward Susan Collins with our support, because if we don't support her, we get Graham Plattner. And we get another step toward, can you imagine that guy in the Senate? And then we get another step toward, the Democrat majority, which of course would end it all. All right, Pete. I knew you'd do a great job of improvisation. You warned me you weren't up on everything, and I said I know you'll be fine. And of course you were. Great job as always, my friend. I will see you. I guess I'll hold off on Middleburg, right? Not Middleburg. I'm sorry. Seven Hills with Mark Kudlowski.
I plan on being there.
We don't have a date on that yet. Now.
Yeah, but yeah, I plan on. Look, I am, as I said, I'm lightening up my workload, and I like bloviating. So if anyone out there wants me to come speak, there's a fair probability that maybe in the past I couldn't have done it because of my schedule. But again, all you gotta do is give me a cup of coffee, and I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if you get on our bus on the 22nd and head down to Columbus with us for a day. It's going to be a phenomenal.
My recollections, I have to look at my calendar, but I remember when I first responded to you, when I looked at my calendar, I had some conflict or something. I can't recall what it was, but I'll see. I'll do my best.
I know you get out there as many places as you can, and I know everybody appreciates seeing you there. So, Pete, thank you, my friend. We appreciate you being here too. We'll see you soon.
Take care, Bob.
All right, there you go. That's Kirsanow. And before I do anything else, I want to say thank you once again to do you a favor here by making sure that you don't get, ripped off by another lousy auto mechanic, because there are too many lousy auto mechanics out there in shady garages. They're going to promise you one price, and when you come in, sorry, that price or that cost of that part was a lot more than we thought. And it took us a lot longer to do it. So there's another 2 hours of labor on there. That's why it's $120 more. Don't get taken in by lousy mechanics. You need your car done right. You want to make sure it's done fairly as well. Take it to Lakewood. If you're in Northeast Ohio, and I know we're trying to reach out to a lot of other places, but if you're in Northeast Ohio and you've got car maintenance things you need to get done or car repairs that have to get done, get to somebody you can trust. You can trust an America First MAGA patriot like Charlie at Charlie's Auto Repair in Lakewood. 13728 Madison Avenue. Phone number there, 216-470-0170. You name it, he'll do it. Whether it's the tough under the hood mechanical stuff or it's a lot more of the electronic stuff. And cars are computers these days. He knows all of it. And the best part is, like I said, he won't rip you off. He's going to, in fact, give you a savings of 10% if you're a first responder, if you are a military veteran or active military, or if you are a concealed carry license holder. You will get 10% off of whatever auto services you need at Charlie's Auto Repair. So Charlie is a phenomenal patriot and a tremendous supporter of Strictly Speaking Unfiltered, going all the way back to the radio side of things as well. We appreciate him so very much. Make sure if you need something done to your car. By the way, Charlie, I'm going to bring my lawnmower to you soon too. 216, he'll do anything with an engine he can fix. 216-470-0170. Call Charlie like I do and know that you're going to get your car back tip-top without any extra expenses whatsoever. All right. To the point that Peter was just making, and by the way, I'm going to list, obviously, all of the events that I'm speaking at as well on the newsletter. Make sure you get the Sunday briefing each and every Sunday morning. See that code? Scan it while I'm talking. I'll leave it up there for about 30 seconds for you to pick out your phone and scan that. That'll take you to the sign-up page to subscribe to my weekly briefing Sunday mornings. But I'll put those in there as well. I've got a number of events coming up. I'm speaking tomorrow at Parma GOP. I'm speaking on Thursday at the Avon Lake Republican Club meeting. I'm speaking in Columbus on the 22nd for the AFP event. That's the one you got to get on the bus for. All right. We're going to be down there. And it's a free trip, by the way. The bus costs nothing. We'll leave from Strongsville about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, get down there about 5, have an event from 5 to about 8:30, and then have you back up home by 10:30, 11 o'clock. It's going to be a fantastic time, and it's free. Come and join us for that very, very important event. And like I said, I'll keep this up there for the 30 seconds I promised. And then I've got another event coming up in July with Middleburg GOP. And we've got, the other one was Seven Hills. Like I said, Seven Hills Republicans. That one is not necessarily locked in yet as far as the day. It was going to be the 18th. Then it was moved to maybe the 23rd, 24th, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I'll post all of those things and I'll send out emails. Okay. I'll send out emails advising of all of those things if you want to get out and be a part of what we're trying to do, being active and influential. By all means, I'll put that in the Sunday briefing. So subscribe to that and I'll send out those emails so that you do not miss any of those events. Okay, everybody. Thank you for being patient through the early morning glitchiness of the platforms and the computers. But I think we got everything worked out eventually. I think we only missed about 15, 20 minutes of the first part of the show, but we did our best after that. If you're watching this on replay, you know none of that because we're going to erase it all. It never happened. Thanks to Kirsanow. Thanks to Dylan helping us out on the engineering side. And thanks to you. Be well, be safe, and stay free. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.